What could be next? Are their lives in danger? Is this a powder keg to the Heritage Foundations and Quintana on all of this? What do you think, Anna? Was it a wise move that we recommend they stay there, don't go anywhere, because we don't recognize what President Maduro is saying and threatening?
I think it's an incredibly wise and justified move to have done the opposite, to have recognized what Maduro is saying is to recognize him as the legitimate leader. And frankly, Maduro would have to be absolutely suicidal to even harm a hair on the head of a U.S. diplomat's head. I mean, we've seen how the Trump administration responded to the diplomatic attacks in Cuba, how he drew down our embassy, and how he responded very strongly against the Cuban government. Now look at the situation in Venezuela and how the Trump administration has been responding over the last 2 years. Maduro would have to be suicidal.
Yeah, no, I hear you on that, but I've seen equally suicidal or foolish leaders. The Ayatollah Khomeini comes to mind in Iran. I'm old enough to remember when he, gave his blessings to the capture of those 400+ largely American hostages at the time. We thought it was outlandish and think that would be quickly resolved. It took a year and a half. So what are we looking at here? How bad is this going to get?
I hear you, but one thing we have to recognize is that the size, the scale, and the widespread demonstrations in Venezuela are absolutely unprecedented, right? The domestic pressure, that's something you've never seen in the 20 years of the socialists governing the country. You've also haven't seen the amount of international pressure of the countries that are no longer just not recognizing Maduro, because that's a list of over 50 countries, but now you have about 15 countries in the Western Hemisphere and in Europe, and as well as Albania and Kosovo, not recognizing President Guaido. I mean, that's incredibly significant, and there's a momentum here. And Maduro has made himself an international pariah, and doing anything again, not only would that be suicidal against the United States, but it would be suicidal against the much of the democratic world.
Anna, what's weird to me here is how a country that had the riches that it did with oil and so many other natural resources squandered it all. Now, I know a lot of people go back to Hugo Chavez and a socialist economy that blew through every last dollar, peso that it had. But what I can't understand is how it went further south still, and how it continues to. And in a desperate economy like that, where inflation's running, or whatever it is, 10 million% or whatever they're reporting, that a guy like that isn't going to just voluntarily give up power. He's going to try to tighten it.
I can give you a 20-second explanation. I mean, the government over the last 3 years has been desperate to survive. And so what Maduro did, he gave the national oil industry over to the army. I mean, it's become a patronage system. It's a slush fund for the upper echelons of the army to continue their illicit activities, and also for them to essentially have the loyalty of Maduro. But that's only at the upper level. The rest of the army, I mean, they're starving and also, facing the same pressures that other Venezuelans are. I mean, the Venezuelan government, it's not just a government, right? We talk about socialist economic policies, but we're not talking about the fact that it's a criminal narco dictatorship. The president, his own stepsons are sitting inside of a U.S. prison right now for attempting to sell drugs to undercover DEA agents. The vice president of Venezuela, the former vice president is a designated drug trafficking kingpin for working with Los Zetas, that violent Mexican drug cartel. I mean, the corruption just runs rampant there.
And people are tiring. We'll see what happens. I hope peacefully. Anna, thank you very much. Very good getting a read from you on this. Again,